from evil, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes for the meeting held on Tuesday, May 27, 2025, be deferred. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Announcements by Your Honour.
I wish to acknowledge the presence of members from the visiting Republic of South Africa, the Gauteng legislature, being led by Mr. Linda Magweli, acting clerk of the legislature. Can you all please stand? Thank you.
Messages from Her Excellency the President, petitions, papers.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm commanded to lead the tourism linkages policy.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 4, in the name of the Order number 4, sir, in the name of the Honourable Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, to move the second reading of the Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2024.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I stand this morning to move an amendment to the Road Traffic Act, which had been presaged by an announcement made in September of last year on an occasion when the Honourable Prime Minister went to the country to discuss matters relating to law enforcement. In a way, Mr. Speaker, the requirement for us to amend the Road Traffic Act to address a law enforcement issue should really be a clarion call to Barbados and indicate to Barbadians that the crime situation in the country requires a number of inputs. And sometimes those inputs will come from avenues that are not immediately obvious to the members of the public. In September of last year, Mr. Speaker, as a result of a National Security Council meeting and a briefing by the Barbados Police Service. The police service indicated to us that there were a number of initiatives that they wished to see the government take. It's important for me to begin in this place because I want to say to the country that this amendment to the Road Traffic Act is not something from the wild imaginings of the executive. It is not something that represents any last-ditch or desperate measures to tackle issues related to crime. It was as a result of a deliberate request by the police service to say to us, with all that you are already doing, there are some things that would assist us in the way in which we deal with crime. And as simple as it might sound, Mr. Speaker, the matter of taint on vehicles was essentially the request made to us of the police service. Mr. Speaker, a recent occurrence where a member of the police service saw one of us being shown a vehicle in broad daylight. And by one of us, I mean one of the members of this chamber. And that police officer pointed out this specific vehicle and asked the member of this chamber, look at that vehicle closely and look at the degree of tint on the vehicle. That car was completely blacked out because of tint. And the police officer called to the attention of the parliamentarian the degree to which nobody could see into that vehicle, and simply asked the parliamentarian to reflect on a police officer having to approach that vehicle, not knowing, not able to ascertain who was in the vehicle, whether they are armed or unarmed. We sometimes ask police officers to go into situations blindly, without a care for whether that individual has a family, whether the individual has to go home to parents or children or loved ones, without a care for anything other than that the public is protected. Now, Mr. Speaker, our police officers don't ask for a lot. They ask for our support, but they don't ask for a lot. But they have, on this occasion, asked us to change the law in relation to the tint on vehicles to protect ourselves and as a measure, perhaps, to protect them. Because a police officer approaching a vehicle that is completely blacked out does not know whether to go and knock on the windscreen. He doesn't know if a fire will be greeting him when the person opens the door, rolls down the window, or perhaps does neither but just fires a shot through the glass. The ability to ascertain the occupants of the vehicle, what they do in the vehicle, is key in determining how a police officer approaches it. Does he approach it with a defensive stance, a friendly good morning, or does he approach it for fear of his life with a gun almost drawn? Or maybe, Mr. Speaker, he decides that is not worth my life, I go in the other direction. That is what our police officers face. Daily, Mr. Speaker, vehicles drive through our communities completely blacked out. And we know that in many instances, when crimes are perpetrated in broad daylight, far less at night, the individuals roll up in vehicles that are completely blacked out. You can't see anything. Now, Mr. Speaker, it may seem like a small thing, but to protect our society, sometimes a small thing makes a difference. There's that old saying about for want of a nail, a shoe was lost, for want of a shoe, a horse was lost. For want of a horse, a battle was lost for want of a nail. I suspect I have the story not flowing with the poetic melody that my primary school teachers instilled in me, but the point is made. For want of a nail, a battle was lost. But, Mr. Speaker, when we say to Barbadians that we're going to do this, this is no novel approach. I have a list of all the Caribbean countries where the level of tint on vehicle is regulated. But you know what Barbados has, Mr. Speaker? Barbados has this road traffic regulations, and for those who want to check, Section 27 of the road traffic regulations, this is what our law has said about tint since 1984. The glass of all windscreens and all windows on the outside of every motor vehicle shall be made of safety glass, not relevant. And the owner of the vehicle shall not permit the glass to be tinted to such a degree as to make the driver of the vehicle unidentifiable from a reasonable distance by a person outside the vehicle. So that is our provision, that the owner of the vehicle shall ensure that the vehicle is not tinted to such a degree as to what? As to make the driver of the vehicle unidentifiable from a reasonable distance to a person outside the vehicle. Now, Mr. Speaker, we would not draft this form of legislation today. This is 41 years old. Because the law itself would say that this, because of its imprecision, because of its absolute subjectivity, could not ground a conviction in law for a criminal offense. And why? Because it says that the person must be identifiable from a reasonable distance to a person outside the vehicle. Now, when you say identifiable, to what extent? You gotta see every mole? You gotta be able to make out there's a human being, or you gotta be able to identify the person specifically? And what if the particular police officer doesn't have the best of eyesight to begin with? And he says, well, I couldn't identify him. So who is this person? What are the characteristics of this person who has to identify an individual in the vehicle? And what is a reasonable distance, Mr. Speaker? Is it 2 feet? Is it 10 feet? Is it 20 feet? The law today, in terms of drafting, always errs on the side of objective standards when possible. And this is a case where it is possible. Because from the time we had tint, we've had tint meters. So why subject a person in a vehicle or the owner of a vehicle to a completely personal and subjective assessment when if you set what the requirements are, specifically, the measurable requirements are, it allows a judge, it allows a magistrate, it allows a police officer, it allows the person to be certain as to what the requirement is and what specifically is the standard that you have not met. Now, Mr. Speaker, we've been content to live with this imprecise law. And I don't know, Mr. Speaker, if you ever represented anybody charged with that kind of offense. But I'm sure that if you had, you would run rings around them. Let us begin with the level of the eyesight of the police officer. Whether outside was dark, outside was light. All these things, I mean, in no time at all, the conviction will be thrown out. Absolutely. But, Mr. Speaker, We do not have to persist with this poor approach to a criminal offense. A criminal offense subjects the individual who is charged and convicted with a blot against their character, with perhaps difficulties going forward in terms of what they might want to do in their life. And while we don't generally treat road traffic offenses in the same way that we treat other criminal offenses, the fact is that you now have a conviction recorded. We can do better, Mr. Speaker, and in every instance where we can do better, we should. Plain and simple. What do I mean by doing better? Well, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that for many years, and you know, we talk about the big USA all the time. For many years, sir, every state in the United States has had standards for tint to be applied to vehicles. Now, I don't want to tie up the chamber with the technicalities, because the lower the number, the darker the tint. The lower the percentage, the darker the tint. And for those of you who are scientists and physicists and all those kind of things, the percentage that is used represents the amount of light that, that passes through the glass. So if you say 20% tint, it means that only 20% of the light will pass through the glass, and therefore it appears darker. A 70% tint means that 70% of the light comes through the glass, and you therefore have better visibility. That is, I hope, an explanation of how it works. So as I said, Mr. Speaker, and I did a little search on the internet. I mean, it's so easy to do. And in some states, Arkansas, they allow 25% tint for the front window, 25% for the side. I mean, so the point is, though, we don't need to go through all this. It is a common occurrence all across the US, in Canada, all across Europe, and even in the Caribbean, for legislatures to have stipulated what is the degree of tint that you are going to be allowed. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Now, Mr. Speaker, we've heard every argument, well, but you're infringing on my privacy. What happens when my car seat fade? We've been told that. I like a dark tint, sir, because my car seat can last longer. Somebody said, but my baby is right in the back seat and the light can hurt them eyes. Every single possible excuse in the book for refusing to allow people to put on whatever tint they like on the vehicle has been put before us. Now, there are some instances, Mr. Speaker, where for medical purposes, and we have a doctor in the house, some individuals are especially sensitive to light. And therefore, having a darker tint will protect them. But you will see, Mr. Speaker, and I propose to make the draft regulation a document of the House, that there are going to be some exceptions to the tint rule, and some of those relate to medical conditions. And again, this is par for the course. So that the regulations, which are made by the minister and can't be made until this bill is passed, the regulation says that you can get exemptions from this requirement based on certification from a medical practitioner and so on, that you have a medical reason why you should have an exemption. So we have not gone into it blindly, Mr. Speaker. We are putting a reasonable framework in place. And I mean, there are a whole long list. I believe that relevant medical condition includes albinism, chronic actinic dermatitis, actinic reticuloid. These are not things that I understand, they're beyond my ken, but we went to the trouble of surveying the legal exemptions across the world, and these are the medical conditions that they allow. Dermatomyositis, that's obviously a thing of the skin. Lupus erythematosus, porphyria, and on and on and on and on. Photophobia associated with an ophthalmic or neurological disorder, or any other condition or disorder causing severe photosensitivity in which an individual is required for medical reasons to be shielded from the direct rays of the sun. So we have contemplated, Mr. Speaker, that exceptions are going to be available. But those exceptions do not include the upholstery of the car fading. They don't include that. Those are the kinds of things that we are not prepared to accept as exceptions. So what we have, Mr. Speaker, and as I said, I'll make the regulations a document of the House, the draft regulations a document of the House. We have a regime which says we are now going to be stipulating the level of tint that you can apply to a vehicle, but it doesn't apply across the board. You are allowed to have exemptions, and those exemptions include medical exemptions. But what is it? What is it that we are stipulating in relation to tint? In the case of the back car windows, the level of tint, the percentage of tint will be 25%. So that means that it is still reasonable enough to cut out some light, but 25% is the figure that we use in the back windows. 20% in the case of the front windows. So driver side, front side passenger, 20%. And then, Mr. Speaker, 70% in the case of windscreens, because you need the windscreen to be as visible as possible. So those are and we didn't just come up with these figures. We had meetings with all of our stakeholders. We met with all the people who own car fleets. We met with the people who apply tint. We met with police. We met with a variety of individuals, all of whom expressed an interest in the particular issue. And these levels of tint were accepted as being reasonable and appropriate to the task. In relation to visors, some windscreens will have a strip at the top, and we've made provision for that as well, which says on a windscreen less than 3 feet in height, 6 inches, where you have a taller windscreen, like in trucks and so on, you can have a 10-inch visor. So we've tried to go into all of those things. Now, the requirement for tint will not apply, the requirement for the tint standard will not apply to motor vehicles used by the President of Barbados, the Prime Minister of Barbados, the BDF, the police service, or the prison service. It will not apply to an ambulance. It will not apply to a motor vehicle for the transportation of human remains. And it will not apply to vehicles for which medical exemptions and other exemptions have been put in place. So, Mr. Speaker, we come back to, for want of a nail. The first point that I want to reiterate is that this is an issue that has been addressed globally, and it is high time that we approach it in a measurable, technical way, as opposed to the subjective, visible from a reasonable distance by somebody on the outside. The Barbados Police Service has bought a large number of tint meters, and the instruction given to them were that they should buy the best tint meters that money could buy, and that is exactly what they did. And they've already been trained on the tint meters. The same thing has happened in the Ministry of Public Works, their licensing office. They also now have these new tint meters, so that we can be sure, in the instance where a police officer has to stop a vehicle, that you can be sure that you're using a device that is is globally respected and that will be accurate in its measurement. The other point that we wish to make is, even in other Caribbean countries, these measures have long been taken. Now, I don't feel that we need to justify it by saying what other people have done, but it should give us some comfort to know that, that we're not the only ones. So Trinidad for many years has had a requirement for taint. Jamaica, and they too have requirements, and in fact they say in Jamaica, no tint is allowed on the 2 front door windows in a vehicle, none at all. St. Vincent is about to pass legislation requiring percentages of tint. St. Lucia, they have a tint requirement. Guyana has a tint requirement, a tint stipulation, I should say, Antigua and Barbuda. So in several countries across the region, several of which are smaller than ours in terms of population, GDP, numbers of vehicles on the road, so other countries have gone this way. So we are not really blazing any new trail. Other countries have gone this way. It is important that we do it, not to follow pattern, but it is important that we do it so as to firm up the regulatory framework, bring certainty to the criminal regime in relation to the offense that a person commits if they don't have the correct level of taint, and that we provide this as a part of dealing with crime in the country. Now, Mr. Speaker, the amendment that is before the chamber is an amendment to the Road Traffic Act. And this amendment does not say you shall have taint of no more than this percentage or less than this percentage. This amendment really says that the minister may by regulations prescribe the circumstances in which a person who contravenes an offense, commits the offense, they have the opportunity to discharge the liability either by paying a fine, paying a fixed penalty on a daily basis, and the remediation of the particular contravention. Nowhere in this amendment does the word taint exist. What this does do is to empower the minister to make regulations for the taint and to provide a regime which says if you do not comply, you will suffer a fine. And if you continue to run afoul of the requirement, that fine is $500. So if you are not compliant, you can be fined, you'll be served a notice, and you pay a $500 fine. For every day that you continue in contravention, you pay an additional $10. And then you must also remediate. So you don't just pay a penalty and go along. You are under an obligation to remove the taint and to put on taint in compliance with the Act. Now again, sir, this reflects a new approach to how we treat people who run afoul of the law. A person who walks up to somebody and stab them or chop them up or shoot them, that is one kind of offense. But a person who puts on the wrong level of tint on his car, there's no animus to be a criminal there. The act of putting on of having the wrong tint applied does not make you a criminal. Maybe the purpose why you might do it, but not the act itself. So rather than clogging up our court system with cases, and you know, sir, that is what we've been doing in relation to a lot of administrative penalties, taking them out of the court system. You get fined, you pay the fine, and go on with your business. The court system is not clogged up. Police ain't got to come court week after week after week dealing with adjournments to give evidence. In a case like this, you pay the fine, and that is it. This is the gold standard, really, in relation to administrative penalties, and that is the approach that we're taking here, and it is the approach, Mr. Speaker, that you will see coming very soon in relation to other criminal offenses under the Road Traffic Act, what we call ticketed offenses. We're going in that direction. So the individual will not have to go to court unless they refuse to pay the fine. If they refuse to pay the fine, then of course they will find themselves before the court facing criminal charges. But the point is that this situation is being dealt with by way of an administrative penalty and not a criminal proceeding where you have to go and stand up before a magistrate and say guilty or not guilty. Today, what happens if you get charged under Section 27? That is exactly what you have to do. Show up in court. How do you plead? Guilty or not guilty? A policeman comes and he gives evidence, oh, he saw this vehicle and so on and so on, all the cross-examination, all that kind of stuff. You don't know where it can go. In this instance, you don't involve the courts at all, only if you are so contumelious that you continue with the breach, don't remove the taint, things of that sort. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that we are ready. There have been some delays before coming to Parliament, but I'm happy to say that we are in this place today, and we are currently reviewing the exact date when this will come into place, and I expect to be able to, I believe that the substantive minister who deals with the Road Traffic Act will be able to say what that date will be when she rises to speak in this debate. This, sir, is an amendment to the Road Traffic Act, which ordinarily has nothing at all with the Office of the Attorney General. Every road traffic amendment really is moved, led by, and is under the remit of the minister responsible for road traffic. But in this exceptional circumstance, because it came as a specific request from the police service, it was felt appropriate that I should be the individual, not to be treading on my learned friend and my colleague, Deputy Prime Minister's toes, but to be able to present it from this particular angle. Mr. Speaker, I do not believe that this requires a lot of palaver from me. The public has been aware of it for quite some time. We've had a long discussion about it. They are aware that this is coming, and therefore I think that we now just need to get it done and have it on our law books so that the public can be protected, the users of the vehicle can be protected, we can have a regime that is predictable and certain, and of course the important benefit to the law enforcement authorities in the circumstances that I have outlined earlier. Mr. Speaker, I don't know that I can usefully add anything else to this debate. Should I need to, I'm happy to address any issues that might come up during the wrap-up. But as I said, I want to make the draft regulations a document to the House. And these draft regulations, do not require to be laid by negative resolution. They're just made by the minister. And therefore, until the minister actually signs them into law, they're not, they're not, I can only make them a document to the House. With those words, sir, I am grateful for your attention and for the opportunity to address this matter.
Honourable member, you'll have to move the bill read.
I'd like to move that this bill be read a second time.
Honourable member, praise yourself.
I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker. I say this not by way of complaint necessarily, but to observe that for some time I have been receiving notice of the content of debates merely a few hours before the actual debate I say it is not by way of complaint, it is merely to express that one wishes the